The marble lobby wasn't quiet anymore. It cracked open with one command. "Get him out. That's right, get him out." The woman at the front desk, tailored navy suit, arms folded like steel bars, didn't whisper it. She flung the words across the chandelier-lit hall as if they were law. Her smile was sharp, rehearsed, a performance for the crowd gathering at the edge of the velvet ropes. 2 security guards moved in fast, gripping the black man by each arm. His leather jacket creaked as they locked him in place, their badges gleaming under the golden lamps. He didn't resist. He didn't flinch. He only stood, silent, anchored like a pillar in the middle of the storm. Behind the desk, her voice struck again. "You have 20 minutes before the police make this official." The sentence hung heavy, calculated for humiliation. Guests froze. Some gasped. One man in a gray suit raised his phone discreetly, recording every second. Another whispered to his companion, "This doesn't look right." But the manager didn't care. She thrived on the spectacle, chin high, lips curled in triumph. The black man's eyes didn't leave hers. Calm, cold. He had seen this look before years ago, at 23, when a loan officer told him he didn't look qualified for credit, even with collateral stacked higher than policy required. At 27, when a landlord refused to hand over keys despite his deposit. And now, decades later, here it was again, wrapped in a lobby of polished brass and chandeliers. The guards tightened their grip, nudging him toward the exit. Phones went up higher. A young woman near the elevators muttered, "Why does he have to leave? He hasn't done anything." Her voice cracked through the hush like a match sparking in dry air. The manager didn't flinch. She leaned forward, her tone dripping with disdain. "Sir, this hotel doesn't serve pretenders. Room service is reserved for our real guests, not walk-ins playing VIP." The insult landed hard, a slap disguised as policy. Murmurs rippled across the hall. The young woman shook her head, pulled her phone from her purse, and hit record. "People need to see this," she whispered. The man finally spoke. His voice was low, measured, steady enough to chill the marble underfoot. "Check your system again." That was all. No yelling, no struggle. Just 6 words pressed into the room like a stamp of inevitability. The guards exchanged a look, uncertain for the first time. The crowd leaned closer. The manager scoffed, louder this time, so her words reached every corner of the lobby. "System's clear. You're nothing. And in 20 minutes, you'll be gone." She thought she had won, but the air was shifting, almost invisible, like the moment before thunder breaks. The guards held firm, each hand gripping tighter as if pressure could prove authority. But the silence of the man they restrained only sharpened the edges of the scene. He stood tall, unshaken, his leather jacket pressed into their fists like it belonged to stone, not skin. Around them, the lobby transformed. What had been a place of polished calm was now a stage. Guests who moments earlier sipped cocktails and scrolled their phones now whispered, gasped, recorded. Every click of a camera sounded like a gavel striking. Every red record light glowed like a warning flare. The manager's voice cut through again, sharp and deliberate. "You're wasting everyone's time. This hotel doesn't bend to frauds. 20 minutes, or the police will make it permanent." She spoke not just to him, but to the audience. Her smirk was theater, her words carefully pitched so even the guests at the far end of the hall could hear. To her, humiliation was policy. A young man near the marble column shook his head. "He paid. I saw him sign earlier," he whispered, barely loud enough. His companion shushed him, eyes darting toward the guards. Fear held most mouths closed, but phones stayed raised. The black man shifted his gaze slow, steady to the faces around him. Calm, collected, as if weighing every witness, every lens. His silence carried weight, forcing the room to lean closer. One guard tugged harder. "Let's move," he muttered, voice clipped, jaw clenched. The man didn't budge. Instead, he spoke again, low enough to draw in silence like gravity. "You're making a mistake." The words weren't loud, but they struck. The nearest guests felt it like cold air rushing into the room. The manager rolled her eyes, arms still crossed, posture firm as if she owned the marble beneath her. "Mistake? No. The mistake is you thinking a phone call and a fake name could buy you respect here." Her laughter drew a few nervous chuckles from the staff. It sounded brittle, forced, like glass about to shatter. The man's eyes narrowed, not in anger but recognition. He had heard this line before different faces, different settings, Same poison in the tone. At 25, when a clerk refused to accept his signature on a property contract. At 30, when a doorman blocked his way into an office he owned. The repetition was almost boring now. Almost. The guards adjusted their grip, trying to force movement. Guests murmured louder. The young woman who had recorded earlier raised her voice, trembling but clear. "This is wrong. He's not doing anything." Her words cracked the air. Phones tilted her way. Suddenly, silence wasn't unanimous. It was cracking. The manager slammed her palm on the counter. "Security! Get him out now! He doesn't belong here!" That phrase, "doesn't belong," hit the air like a stone through glass. It was no longer about policy. It was about erasure. And in that moment, the man finally moved. Not toward the exit, not against the guards, but forward one subtle step that carried the weight of inevitability. His voice, calm yet commanding, rose above the noise. "Call your system. Check my name. Do it now." The lobby held its breath. The desk clerk hesitated, eyes flicking toward the manager. Fingers hovered over the keyboard, but the woman in the navy suit cut him off before a single key could be pressed. "Don't waste time," she barked. "His name isn't in the system. He's trying to trick us. We've seen this before." Her certainty was theater, but it dripped venom into the room. A ripple of murmurs moved through the lobby. Some believed her, others didn't. The division itself was fuel. One of the guards squeezed harder on the black man's arm. "Come on," he muttered. But the man didn't resist. His eyes locked on the clerk instead, steady as a blade. "Check it," he said again, voice low, deliberate. "Check my name." The hesitation grew. Guests leaned in. A woman in heels near the bar whispered, "Why not look? If he's lying, it'll show." Her friend nodded, phone raised, recording every second. The manager's jaw tightened. Her smile cracked. "Enough. This ends now." She motioned sharply to the guards. "Escort him out." But the crowd shifted. Not physically, not yet, but their silence changed tone. No longer passive, it was tense, waiting, ready to burst. Phones tilted higher. Whispers sharpened into commentary. "Why won't she just check? He hasn't raised his voice once. This doesn't feel right." The guards tugged again. The man still stood firm, feet planted like anchors in the marble. His voice, calm as ever, cut through the rising noise. "You're humiliating yourself more than me." The words landed heavy. The clerk froze, fingers still above the keyboard. The young woman with the phone gasped, her voice trembling. "He said it. He's right." The manager snapped toward her. "Mind your business." Her shout ricocheted off the chandelier glass. But the moment she raised her voice, the balance shifted. Guests noticed. Staff noticed. The calm man hadn't shouted once. She had. The tension cracked further when another witness stepped forward. A bellboy, barely 20, uniform slightly wrinkled, clutching his phone nervously. His voice shook, but carried across the lobby. "I saw his reservation. This morning. Penthouse suite. His name is there." Gasps. Murmurs turned into voices. "You see? He's telling the truth." She lied. "Check the system already." The manager's face drained of color, but she fought to hold ground. "Lies," she hissed. "You're all being played. This is a scam, and you're falling for it." But the crowd was no longer with her. Every word she spoke felt weaker, smaller. The power she wielded moments ago was slipping through her hands like water. And still, the black man stood unmoved, calm in the chaos. He tilted his head slightly, almost curious, and said with quiet finality, "You just proved more than you know." The lobby wasn't silent anymore. It was charged, every guest, every phone, every eye fixed on the unraveling stage. The manager's voice grew harsher, her mask of professionalism slipping fast. "You all think you're seeing injustice?" she spat, eyes darting from the guests to the calm figure at the center. "You're being fooled. This man is a con artist. He doesn't belong in this hotel, and he never will." She snapped her fingers. One of the guards yanked at the man's jacket, pulling him a step closer to the exit. Gasps rippled through the lobby. The leather creaked under the force, but the man's posture didn't break. He stood like stone being dragged by ropes. A woman in the crowd shouted, "Stop! You can't treat him like that!" Her phone trembled as she held it high. More voices joined, not loud yet, but steady, murmuring into the charged air. The manager slammed her palm against the counter, her face flushed. "Enough of this circus. You want proof? Fine, show me your keycard, your ID, right here, right now. Her words weren't policy anymore. They were taunts, a performance born of panic. The man didn't move. His voice came low, cutting clean through the noise. You took my keycard from the tray. You already know it's real. For a heartbeat, silence. Then the clerk, still frozen at his terminal, nodded slightly. She did take it, he whispered. The words slipped out before he could stop them. Phones swiveled his way. The manager spun, fury blazing. Quiet! You don't know what you're talking about. But the damage was done. The truth had leaked into the room. One of the guards shoved harder, frustrated, his grip sliding near the man's wrist. The move looked less like procedure and more like assault. The crowd reacted instantly. A chorus of gasps, protests, camera shutters snapping. Don't touch him like that. This is going too far. Someone call the news. The young bellboy who had spoken earlier stepped forward again, voice shaking but clear. He's a registered guest. His name is Carter, penthouse suite. I checked him in myself this morning. The lobby erupted. Guests shouted, some clapping in defiance. The guards faltered, uncertain now. Even their grip weakened under the weight of dozens of eyes recording them. The manager hissed, desperate. You think one trainee's word will save him? He's nothing. He's a fraud parading as someone important. Her tone cracked, too shrill, too exposed. And in the contrast, the man's stillness grew louder than her rage. He lifted his chin, eyes steady, and said, each word heavy as stone. You just called a guest a fraud. In the middle of his own hotel. The sentence wasn't shouted. It didn't need to be. The lobby itself seemed to inhale, stunned by the gravity of what had just been spoken. Phones caught every syllable. And for the first time, fear flickered in the manager's eyes. The room vibrated with whispers. Phones lifted higher, the glow of screens multiplying like stars across the lobby. The guards loosened their grip, unsure now, caught between orders and the judgment of 100 recording eyes. The black man drew a slow breath. He didn't jerk free. He didn't raise his voice. He simply reached into the pocket of his jacket. The guards tensed, expecting resistance. Instead, he pulled out a phone, sleek, black, already unlocked. He raised it to his ear. His tone was calm, deliberate. Activate protocol. Log everything from this moment. A woman's voice answered instantly, crisp, professional, steady as steel. Confirmed. Timestamp initiated. The system is live. Gasps broke through the crowd. They expected please. They got procedure. The manager scoffed, trying to reclaim her ground. Oh, please. What is this, a stunt? You think a phone call scares me? The man didn't even glance at her. His voice carried only for the line, yet it filled the hall. Secure all access points. Freeze staff credentials tied to this incident, and notify corporate oversight. The woman on the line replied without hesitation. Already in motion. Their IDs will flag red within minutes. The guards exchanged a look. Sweat beaded on one forehead. For the first time, they eased their hold, palms uncertain against his jacket. The crowd shifted with them. A ripple of recognition spread. Guests whispered, "He's not bluffing. This is bigger than it looks. He's somebody." The manager slammed the counter again, her voice rising, brittle with panic. "Don't believe this. He's playing you, all of you. Security, hold him." But the command fell flat. The guards no longer moved with certainty. They hesitated, caught in the crossfire of authority unraveling. The man lowered the phone, his expression carved from calm resolve. His voice, for the first time, rose slightly, not loud, but firm enough to silence the murmurs. You thought silence meant weakness. It meant patience, and patience is over. The words rolled through the lobby like thunder, muffled but undeniable. Guests leaned forward, breath held. A woman near the bar whispered into her camera, "This is the moment. Something's about to flip." The man raised the phone again. "Confirm live monitoring." The assistant's voice came steady. "Compliance team is on. Every word has been logged. Every action witnessed. You're covered." A sharp exhale rippled through the room. The tension was no longer just against him. It was against her, the manager, suddenly paling under the weight of 100 eyes, 100 lenses, and one truth that refused to bend. The lobby hung in silence, charged like air before lightning. Every eye, every lens, every held breath pressed toward the man in the center, still steady, still anchored, the guard's hands now hesitant shadows on his sleeves. He lowered the phone, slid it into his jacket pocket, and finally turned to face the manager directly. His voice was low but edged with iron. "You keep calling me a fraud, a pretender, someone who doesn't belong here." Each phrase landed with surgical precision. Guests leaned closer, phones tilted higher. "But here's the truth." He straightened, shoulders squared, his presence filling the hall more than chandeliers or marble ever could. "I'm not a guest. I'm not a pretender." The pause stretched just long enough for anticipation to burn. Then he dropped it calm, decisive, absolute. "I am the owner of this hotel. Every brick, every paycheck, every key in this building answers to me." The words detonated. Gasps surged through the crowd. A woman near the bar clapped her hand over her mouth. The bellboy who had defended him earlier whispered, "I knew it. I knew it." Phones shook as people scrambled to capture the reveal, disbelief painted across their faces. The guards froze. Their grips dissolved instantly, arms falling uselessly at their sides. They stepped back like men released from a spell, their authority cracked and broken. The manager, though, staggered under the weight of his words. Color drained from her face, but pride forced her mouth to move. You're lying," she stammered, voice hollow, brittle. "If you owned this place, I would know." He tilted his head, gaze sharp, tone unyielding. "You don't know because you never cared to look. To you, appearance is everything. Jacket, skin, silence, you judged them all. And you judged wrong." The crowd erupted again. Some clapped. Others shouted. Phones streamed live captions across social feeds in real time. One guest raised his voice above the noise. "I've seen him before Forbes' cover. Last year. Carter Enterprises." Recognition spread like fire. Murmurs turned into certainty. Strangers echoed the name back and forth. "Carter, Carter, Carter." The manager shook her head, backing into the counter as if marble could hold her up. "No, no, this can't," but it already had. The truth was alive, and the room had swallowed it whole. The man, no longer just a guest in their eyes, stood tall, voice firm, steady enough to silence the chaos once more. "You didn't just insult a customer. You insulted the very foundation of your own employment. And now, you'll answer for it." The lobby, moments ago a stage for humiliation, had transformed into a courtroom, and the verdict was already written on every face staring back at her. The silence after his words was brief, just a heartbeat before the lobby erupted. It began with scattered gasps, then sharp whispers, then the unmistakable swell of applause. One guest near the entrance clapped slowly, defiantly, his phone still raised. Another joined, then another, until the sound of palms striking echoed across marble and glass. The manager's face blanched, her confidence drained like color washed from a photograph. She tried to speak, but the words snagged in her throat. All she managed was a fractured, this isn't," before the rising tide of approval drowned her out. The guards stood stranded, no longer protectors of order but symbols of shame. They lowered their hands completely, stepping away from the man they'd held just minutes before. One glanced at the glowing phones pointed his way, his jaw tightening with regret. The other shifted uncomfortably, muttering under his breath, "We didn't know." But the crowd wasn't looking at them anymore. All focus was pinned on the man now revealed not as a guest, but as the owner. His name was already spreading like wildfire through the digital feeds. Carter. The comments on live streams rolled in faster than anyone could read them. "He's the CEO. Caught in 4 kelvins. This lobby just turned into a reckoning." The young bellboy, eyes wide with vindication, raised his voice again. "I told you. I checked him in myself. He belongs here more than anyone." His words cracked with emotion, and the crowd cheered. The manager clutched the counter for balance, her knuckles white. Her smirk was gone, replaced by trembling lips that could no longer spin lies into authority. The clerk at the computer shrank into his seat, guilt carved across his face. He avoided her gaze, typing aimlessly as if the screen could save him. One guest, near the velvet ropes, shouted, "You owe him an apology." Another followed, "No, she owes him her job." The voices fused into a chant, irregular but unstoppable. "Justice, justice, justice." The weight of it pressed down. The manager's knees buckled slightly. She steadied herself, but the power was gone. Every second she had wielded the room like a weapon was now turned back on her, sharper, louder, undeniable. The man Carter stood motionless through the storm, eyes calm, posture unshaken. It was not triumph painted on his face, but inevitability. He didn't need to demand respect. It had already bent toward him. One final blow came from a middle-aged guest in a tailored gray suit. He stepped forward, his phone raised high for all to hear. On screen, he replayed the manager's earlier words. "This service isn't for people like you. 20 minutes, and you're gone." The audio rang across the lobby, damning in its clarity. Gasps erupted again, sharper this time. The evidence was undeniable. The crowd surged with outrage, not just at her words, but at the arrogance behind them. The manager's eyes darted to the doors, to the guards, to anyone who might save her. But no one moved. She was alone now, cornered by truth and witness. And still, Carter didn't raise his voice. He only spoke once more, the calm edge of his tone slicing through the noise. "The clock you gave me has run out, but not for me, for you." The applause thundered. The verdict was sealed. The applause still echoed when Carter raised his hand, and the lobby obeyed. The clapping softened, the chants dimmed, until only silence remained. His presence alone steadied the room like an anchor thrown into turbulent waters. He pulled the phone from his jacket once more and pressed a single button. His voice dropped low, deliberate, unmistakably in control. "Confirm system override." The assistant's voice came through instantly, calm and precise. "System override confirmed. Please state the action." Carter's gaze locked on the manager, her frame trembling behind the counter. "Effective immediately, terminate manager Evelyn Ross, revoke her credentials, lock her out of all Horizon systems, flag her for legal audit." Gasps rippled through the lobby. The clerk looked up, stunned, his fingers frozen on the keyboard. The guards exchanged glances, their faces draining of color. The assistant didn't hesitate. "Processing completed. Evelyn Ross no longer has system access. Her badge is red." Right on cue, the manager's keycard clipped proudly to her blazer just minutes before buzzed with a sharp beep. The LED on its surface flashed crimson, a sound no one mistook. Termination. She fumbled at the badge, disbelief widening her eyes. No, this isn't possible. You can't." But Carter wasn't finished. His voice cut clean across her protest. "Terminate supporting staff involved. Security leads. Revoke. Desk clerk. Suspend pending review." The assistant's voice confirmed again. "IDs disabled. Credentials revoked. Horizon system updated." Phones trembled in guests' hands as they recorded the unfolding reckoning. One woman whispered into her camera, "He just fired them. On the spot. I've never seen anything like this." The guards looked down at their belts as their own badges flickered red. One ripped his off and dropped it to the marble floor, the plastic cracking on impact. The other muttered, "We're done," his voice thin, hollow. The desk clerk sat back, pale, hands shaking above the keys. I was following orders," he stammered, his voice breaking. But no one spoke for him. The room had already judged. The manager's face collapsed, her defiance shattered. You can't ruin people like this," she whispered, voice brittle. Carter's response was measured, final. "I don't ruin people. They ruin themselves. I only end what they start." The words carried the weight of steel. Guests nodded, clapped, some even cheered. The digital feeds surged, comments exploding, hashtags forming live. Justice wasn't whispered anymore. It was trending. And through it all, Carter remained still, composed. No shouting, no gloating, just the quiet certainty of a man who didn't need to prove his power. He was his power. The lobby, once hostile, now belonged to him completely. The sound of badges deactivating still lingered when the lobby erupted again, not with anger this time, but with collective astonishment. Phones lifted higher. The glow of screens bathed the marble walls like floodlights, each angle capturing a piece of history in the making. The guards, once pillars of authority, now stood hollow. One stared at the red light flashing on his badge, jaw slack, hands trembling. The other bent down to pick up the broken plastic from the floor, but stopped halfway, realizing there was nothing left to salvage. Their shoulders slumped, uniforms suddenly costumes without meaning. The desk clerk leaned back in his chair, pale as parchment. His lips moved, but no sound came. Finally, he whispered, barely audible, "What have I done?" He buried his face in his hands. The crowd didn't care. Their sympathy had already evaporated. The manager, Evelyn Ross, gripped the counter as if marble could hold her steady. The crimson glow of her dead badge pulsed against her blazer, mocking her. She turned desperately toward the guests, eyes wide, pleading. "You don't understand, he can't do this, not here, not like this." But no one moved to defend her. No one answered. Instead, a woman near the bar shouted, "We saw everything." Another voice joined. "You humiliated him, and now it's your turn." The applause roared again, louder, bolder. Guests clapped, not just for Carter but against her. Each strike of palms was a verdict. Social media feeds buzzed in real time. Live streams hit thousands of viewers. Comments exploded. Justice in 4 kelvins. Never judge a book by its cover. Silent power is greater than loud authority. A young guest with curly hair shouted over the noise. "Twitter's already on fire. This is going viral." His screen showed hundreds of retweets, the name Carter trending across feeds. The bellboy who had defended Carter stood straighter now, his voice firmer. "You treated him like nothing, but he owns everything here, and now the world knows it." His words carried pride, defiance, and a trembling sense of vindication. Evelyn's eyes darted desperately to the doors, to the staff who once obeyed her. But no one moved. Even the concierge, who had been silent until now, shook her head slowly and whispered to another guest, "She deserves this." The walls seemed to close in on Evelyn. Her authority had drained faster than sand through an hourglass. Her words, her smirk, her power all gone, dismantled in front of witnesses and strangers who now celebrated her downfall. Carter hadn't raised his voice once. That silence, more than anything, condemned her. A man in a tailored gray suit, still filming, summed up the crowd's sentiment in one line. She tried to erase him. Instead, she erased herself. The lobby thundered with cheers. Justice wasn't a concept anymore. It was live, it was recorded, and it was irreversible. The thunder of applause settled into a tense hum, the kind of energy that fills a courtroom moments before a final sentence. Carter stood in the center, unmoved, the storm of judgment swirling around him but never touching him. His phone still glowed in his hand, a quiet instrument of power. He lifted it once more. His tone remained even, controlled, the same composure he had carried from the beginning. "Escalate the audit," he instructed. "Freeze all financial accounts linked to Evelyn Ross. Lock out her department from the Horizon network, effective immediately." The assistant's reply was crisp, almost mechanical. "Understood. Credentials purged. Accounts frozen. Department access revoked." The manager's knees buckled. She clutched the counter, her voice breaking into a desperate plea. You can't strip me like this. I've given 10 years to this place." Carter's gaze was steady, unyielding. "You gave 10 years to your pride, not this place. And today that pride cost you everything." Her mouth opened again, but no words came. The crowd, sensing the collapse, filled the silence with their own verdict. Cheers, shouts, the unrelenting flood of camera flashes. The guards stepped further back, no longer in uniform spirit but in visible shame. One muttered, "We're finished," under his breath. The other tugged at his badge, already useless, and shoved it deep into his pocket as though to bury the memory. The desk clerk tried once more, a weak defense tumbling from trembling lips. "I was just following orders. I didn't mean—" Carter cut him off with a single glance, then spoke into the phone again. "Suspend clerical staff involved in the incident. Pending investigation." The clerk's screen went black in front of him. His hands fell limp against the keyboard. He whispered, "No, it's gone," his voice cracking as realization sank in. The guests didn't flinch. Sympathy wasn't in the room anymore. What lingered was justice, raw and undeniable. One woman near the entrance lifted her phone high and declared for her live stream, "This isn't just about one man. It's about power misused and corrected. Right here, right now." Her comment section exploded in real time, scrolling too fast to read. Evelyn tried to speak again, but the words collapsed into sobs. Her blazer, once a symbol of control, now looked like armor turned to paper. She had no shield left. Carter ended the call, his final words sealing the moment. "Documentation complete. This incident is logged for legal review. No appeal." The assistant's confirmation chimed softly through the speaker. "Process finalized." The sound was quiet, but in the lobby it was deafening. A final gavel strike, a line drawn, irreversible. Guests clapped again, some even standing, their phones raised like torches in a vigil of justice. The lobby had transformed into a tribunal, and the verdict was absolute. Carter didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He simply stood in silence, letting the truth do what arrogance never could endure. The lobby no longer felt like a hotel. It felt like a stage where the curtain had finally dropped, leaving the villains exposed in harsh light. Evelyn Ross, once smug behind the desk, now collapsed into the chair she had commanded like a throne. Her hands shook, her blazer hung loose, and her eyes darted desperately to every corner as though someone might still defend her. No one did. The crowd's gaze was relentless, their phones like mirrors forcing her to see herself stripped of authority. The guards, once muscle for her words, leaned against the far wall. Shoulders slumped, heads bowed, their uniforms now carried the weight of shame, not power. One wiped sweat from his brow, muttering, "We should have known better." His partner didn't answer, his silence was confession enough. The desk clerk stared at his darkened monitor, his fingers frozen above the dead keyboard. The screen no longer responded. The Horizon logo that had once logged him into authority was gone, erased. He whispered into the void, "It's over," though no one was listening. Meanwhile, the guests surged into something greater than witnesses, they became participants. Applause thundered through the marble, laughter rang out, some even chanting Carter's name. A group near the bar raised their glasses, one of them shouting, "To justice!" The toast echoed, answered by claps and cheers. Social media erupted alongside them. Screens lit up with comments streaming faster than anyone could read. She really tried it, and he ended her in seconds. Never underestimate silence, it's the loudest power in the room. This is going viral in every language tonight. One guest scrolled in disbelief, her live stream count climbing past 15,000. "Oh my God," she whispered. "They're already calling it the Carter verdict." Her chat flooded with emojis, hashtags, and declarations of support. Evelyn's breakdown deepened as she realized the scale. It wasn't just a firing, it was exposure. The entire internet was now her jury, and they had already chosen. A woman in a floral scarf stepped forward, her voice clear and unforgiving. "You tried to erase him, but you erased yourself." The crowd cheered, the sentence echoing across the marble like a second gavel. Carter remained steady, unmoved, his silence amplifying every word spoken in his defense. He hadn't asked for a savior, yet the room had chosen to stand for him. Even guests who had hesitated earlier now leaned into the tide. A man in a tailored Navy suit raised his phone high, declaring, "This is history. Remember this night. We saw justice live." Cameras flashed. Streams rolled. The downfall of Evelyn Ross and her team was no longer private humiliation. It was public record, irreversible, unforgettable. And at the center stood Carter, calm, composed, a figure who had never needed to shout. His presence alone had rewritten the balance of the room. The lobby was no longer hers. It was his. It always had been. The lobby, once a battlefield of humiliation, had fallen into reverent silence. Guests stood shoulder to shoulder, their phones still raised, but their voices hushed. They were waiting not for Evelyn Ross to defend herself, not for the guards to explain, but for Carter. He stood in the center of it all, calm as the eye of a storm, his leather jacket steady under the lights. For the first time that evening, he allowed the silence to stretch long enough to feel heavy. Then he spoke. "You thought I didn't belong here," he said, voice steady, carrying through marble and glass without a microphone. "But this hotel, this company, exists because of me. Every floor, every room, every key card is tied to the work of my hands, my vision, my leadership. And yet you tried to erase me, to strip me down to nothing in front of strangers." His gaze swept the crowd. "That wasn't just about me. It was about everyone you've dismissed, because they didn't look the way you expected, speak the way you wanted, or fit the image you approved. Tonight, that ends." The words landed like verdicts, each syllable striking deeper than the applause that followed. He reached into his jacket one last time, not for his phone, but for a slim black folder. Setting it on the counter, he slid it across the polished surface toward the trembling manager. "That is the termination notice, signed before tonight ever happened, because complaints about you had already reached my desk. What you did here only sealed what was inevitable." Evelyn's face broke, her voice a whisper. "Please." But her plea dissolved into nothing. Carter turned back to the room. The crowd leaned closer, his final words cut with surgical precision, designed to last beyond the night. "Justice doesn't need to shout. It doesn't need violence. It needs truth and the power to enforce it. You mistook silence for weakness. That was your last mistake." The lobby erupted cheers, applause, chants of his name. Phones captured every angle, every word. Online, streams surged past tens of thousands, comments rolling in like waves. Legend. This is how you handle discrimination. Silent power. Eternal respect. Carter didn't raise a hand to quiet them this time. He simply stood tall, absorbing the moment without needing to embellish it. Then, with a nod to his assistant still on the line, he ended the call that had dismantled careers in real time. As the cheers swelled, he turned and walked toward the elevator, calm, unhurried, untouchable. Guests stepped aside as if parting for royalty. The doors slid shut behind him, sealing the night with one final truth. He hadn't just reclaimed dignity, he had redefined it. And for everyone who had witnessed it, in person or through a glowing screen, one lesson rang clear and unforgettable. Power speaks loudest when it doesn't need to raise its voice.